Riki Ellison joins us from Sydney, Australia. He is the head of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance, and he analyzes the North Korea situation, specifically the nuclear threat, because that ultimately is what this is about, and he understands the systems. I chatted with Riki from his hotel in Australia before the program, and I asked him, what is Trump's goal in now this second summit with the kid dictator?
I think the goals here would be a concession, a pretty major concession by the North Koreans on their destruction or movement forward on denuclearization. That would have to come out of this summit for it to be of any substance at all. So I think that's what we are expecting. I think, like in previous summits, they have already agreed upon something that'll be released after they officially talk to each other, but I would assume that some of these have already been or just shaping up right now to full agreement of what is going to come out of this.
Okay, so are you saying that denuclearization has already been agreed upon by both sides?
So they're negotiating that right now, and if it goes great with them, they'll release that statement. If it doesn't go great with them, they'll release another statement. So they'll have two options to go, but I would believe this would be the only reason Trump would meet with him.
Does Trump and the North Koreans, do they have the same definition of denuclearization?
Yeah, I think there's extremes, right? And I think, as the CIA chief said last month, nobody expects them to clean that out completely. So, yeah, we're going to go in asking for zero, but we certainly probably won't get zero out of this. But we would get a very small amount that we could handle. And we would get, I think, on the other end of it, a peace agreement that's ratified that stops the Korean conflict that we see it, and then reduction of the DMZ and the reduction of the huge forces that are facing each other today.
So a small reduction in the nuclear arms that are already produced inside North Korea, is that what you expect to happen?
I would say, no, I meant the other direction. There would be a majority of, we won't be able to get down to zero nuclear weapons from North Korea, but we will take the majority of them away, and we would destroy any of their future capabilities. They would self-destroy any of their future capabilities. So there'll be a very minimum amount, and a minimum amount that we can negate easily.
And in return, the U.S. would draw down its troops on the Korean Peninsula?
In return, we would give them peace and a end of the Korean War security agreement that would enable drawdown of both sides of the border of the DMZ. Now, that's not eliminating U.S. force structure inside North Korea. That won't happen. But it would deconflict and take away the mass amounts of troops on both sides from that border.
So do you anticipate that U.S. troops would just move away from the border further south on the peninsula, or would they be completely removed off the peninsula?
No, I think there would be. A South Korean more movement for them to control that. And our immediate, force structures that are aggressive, that are meant to take land and so forth, will be withdrawn from it. I think our strategic air bases and our strategic naval bases will stay in place. So that's, and this is my guess. I mean, this is a long ways away from doing, because you got to come down to the terms of the principle of the agreement, which we're not even close to right now. So getting that first before you get that's way down the line. We have to come to terms with North Korea on what denuclearization is, number one, and that's what this meeting is about.
If they're still at the terms of defining denuclearization, and Trump could be on the clock to be out of office in roughly a year and a half, what kind of timetable does Trump really have to play with?
No, I think this will be passed to the next president if he's only in the office the next year and a half. But he also could be in that office another 4 years. So the North Koreans also understand that same risk. So they may not ever get a reception from the next president. So they're going to obviously take advantage of this in another way, just probably the same way that Trump is. So I think there's good movement and good incentive for both sides to come up with something before a year and a half goes by. You understand that?
Yeah.
I think on the bigger picture, China and Russia on the outside would be forcing that play of just wait this out. But I don't think the North Korea leader is going to get an audience like this ever again, possibly. So he's going to take advantage of it.
So what are Kim Jong-un's goals? What are his goals for this week?
I think to get the peace agreement. He wants a security agreement from the United States to have a final end of the Korean War. That's his sole goal on this whole thing. And then he wins on that. Then he's able to denuclearize. He has to have that anyways for him to move down from his populist position. So that's what he's gonna want to push. He's gonna it's the chicken before the egg. So he's gonna want this by the United States first. The United States wants his denuclearization first. So that's where this negotiation is going to, figure out. And I'm pretty sure we would get the right end of the stick on this.
Is there any significance in the meeting being held in Hanoi?
No, I think it's someone that both sides can trust.
Is there any significance in Kim Jong-un arriving? I believe he arrives tonight, several days ahead of Trump. Is there a reason why he's arriving early?
I don't see that. I don't see anything like that unless there are some trade agreements and so forth that he wants to press upon Vietnam.
So the last summit was roughly 7-8 months ago. And in that 7 or 8 months, what has changed for North Korea, if anything?
Well, I think they've realized that they couldn't get to the second summit without some major concession. I don't think, you're going to have to expect something else. There's no way the president would waste his time in an effort to meet with the North Koreans.
Did North Korea push for this summit? Were they the ones pushing for the summit?
Yeah, I think there was mutual. Both sides were trying to push for the summit. But, we also know that North Korea has continued to produce its capabilities and its nuclear weapons and its ICBM numbers during this time. Though they've not tested it, they've continued to do that, to use that as a negotiation point. So that, they're coming in as strong as they think they need to be to say, hey, nothing's been agreed upon. We are still going forward with that. I mean, it's great that there's no testing going on. I think the reintroduction of U.S. exercises is going to happen. So there's going to be a couple things that are going to happen out of this. But to say that nothing's going to come out of this, it would be incorrect. I don't believe, why would they need if nothing's going to come out of it?
Well, since the last summit in Singapore, after that, Trump canceled the U.S. military exercises. Why would he reinstate those exercises after this week's summit?
Well, because those exercises are bigger than North Korea. Those exercises are bringing our forces together on a regular routine for readiness, and that strengthens our ability to be the most ready we can be in that region. So those exercises need to continue, and I think he did that to give the North Koreans a chance to come back to him with a major concession. There's been no seriously major concession done by the North Koreans. And if there's not one done, the whole thing will be over.
So if North Korea has done no concessions or no meaningful concessions since the last summit, why would they do concessions after this next summit?
Well, because I think they wouldn't be meeting if that wasn't the case. They're not going to meet and then nothing coming out of this.
And do
that's not worth the time and energy of both parties to do this.
Okay. And was there something
has happened?
Right. So what pressure did the United States apply over the last 8 months that leads you to believe that North Korea is now ready to make concessions?
First off, the economic sanctions are really crushing down on North Korea's economy, number one, and the primary reason why they're buckling, because we've anteed up and we've been more forceful of those sanctions, economic sanctions. Secondly, you saw our movements in the Missile Defense Review that has enabled blue space missile defense and underlayer missile defense, which exponentially defends the country, much greater than it is today.
Is China still in a similar position for this summit, kind of on the sidelines, wishing they were playing a more prominent role?
I think they've applied a tremendous amount of pressure on Kim Jong-un for what they expect out of the summit. So the North Korea leaders got to play both China and the U.S. and South Korea to his best advantage. So that's what we're going to see on that. But certainly China has voiced their position greatly to them, whether that is stalling this thing out and waiting for the next president, whether that is getting the U.S. forces out of the peninsula, whatever those things are, they've certainly applied that on them.
Is it fair to say then that whatever comes out of this summit this week will have heavy fingerprints from China?
So you can't say China has his full fingerprints on it, but China certainly is exuding pressure that he has to respond to. Not all of it, but some of it.
Would you expect Trump to sit in a room alone with Kim Jong-un again, just one-on-one?
Well, if Trump thinks he needs to look him in the eye and size him up and get into the hardcore negotiation, which I think the president is supposed to be good at, then that would happen. I don't know what his mannerisms are or how many people in the room are, but I think the reason for the face-to-face is because Trump believes he can message more effectively that way.
That's Riki Ellison, Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance, joining us from Sydney, Australia, and getting us started on this edition of Voice to America.